Welcome back to Beyond Talent Swim Podcast, episode 4. So today, I don't have a guest. The first 3 podcasts I had a guest. Today, I just wanted to share my thoughts around why swimmers in Kenya are not getting to an international level. So whenever we go for competitions, we are barely able to make it to finals. We struggle to make international standards. We struggle to get to the next level. And it has been like that since the time I was swimming about 15, 18 years ago. And what is it that we are not doing right? What is it that we can change so that we can get to that level? Because funny thing, when I was in South Africa in training, I realized some of the champions are coming from very basic pools. So it's not infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure is a small aspect of it. So in today's episode, I'll just be speaking through what I think some of the things that are causing us not to reach the next level, and what are some of the things that we can do. Because here in Beyond Talent Podcast, we believe that talent is not enough and systems win. So a lot of it will revolve around systems. So let me start with my first point. So I have 6 things that I think we are going wrong and we need to change. And the first one is a thing that that has been near and dear to my heart for a long time, which is the academic system in Kenya. The academic system in Kenya does not allow for athletes and swimmers in general to thrive. And I'll just give a bit of statistics as we are going. So I went back and I did a bit of research about at what point is it that we divert from the norm. So when we look at our under 9s, under 8 swimmers in Kenya, our times are quite comparable to international standards. Not that they're the same, but our babies are swimming very well. But when we get to about 12, 13 again, still comparable, because even when we look at the previous South Africa National Junior Championships, we were able to medal at South Africa National Juniors. However, when you look at the 16 and over category, there is no way any of our swimmers or most of our swimmers who are training locally would have medaled at South Africa Junior Champs between the ages of 16 and 18. We have very few, maybe one outlier here and there who would have medaled. So at about 10 is where I have seen a bit of a divergence from when our swimmers are going or deviating away from international standards. And it is multifactorial. I cannot say it is just one thing, but honestly, 50% of the problem is the academic programs. So once you get to about 10 years, in Cambridge, that's about year 4, I think, or 10 to 12. Let me give it a range, 10 to 12, because again, it varies. That's the time you get into about year 6, year 7. So that is when you're going to be hit by your first checkpoint exams. And at this point is where schools or the system in general overemphasizes academics over extracurricular. You have to choose. Am I going to pass exams or am I going to swim? It is not either or. It is always you have to pick one path. So at this point in schools, the pressure mounts. We start having Saturday classes. We start having tuition. We start having reduced time for academics. We start having classes starting earlier. And this is Cambridge I'm talking about, and even CBC. CBC is even worse. So let me call it CBE to be more technically correct. CBE is even worse because at these ages, the kids are expected in class at 6:30 in the morning. And they leave at about 5 p.m. CBE was supposed to come and actually revolutionize sports, entertainment, technology. But it has done the exact opposite because we have gone back to the same academic way of thinking. So again, at about 10 to 12, academic pressure starts mounting. So at this point, when the people in the US, the UK, South Africa are ramping up the training, making the training of higher quality, we have to reduce. Because even for me, in our club, some of the swimmers have to leave training early, have to take breaks because of exams. So that's how it starts. But we're able to get away with it for a few years. Fast forward to the time that is very challenging. So number one, when we look at CBE 844, by class 8, by year 8, it has already knocked you off. most of the time you've been knocked off. The only athletes or swimmers who are able to progress past are the ones who are in Cambridge. So because Cambridge is has a bit more leniency with the hours of academics. So we're talking about now a 14-year-old. So a 14-year-old is in year 10, going to year 11, which is an exam year. So what happens is that at this point, most people, the academic pressure is heavy. Because in Kenya, we run our Cambridge schools like we do 844 schools. We increase the amount of time that the students need to be studying. So now studying is a full-time job from 6 in the morning to 7 or 8 p.m. Swimming hours have now started reducing drastically. Instead of you being able to ramp up your training to about 2 hours, because at that age, your training session should be about 2 hours. And I'm not talking about 2 hours of mindless volume. I'm talking about thoughtful 2-hour swims, working on your stats, working on your turns. So what happens at that point is when we're supposed to be getting more swimming, like in the other countries, we're reducing. So again, our swimmers are not able to swim much over 100 meters. And even the quality of the swims have dropped. So I'm in year 11, I'm doing exams, I have to take a break, I have to reduce the hours. I'm like, you know what? In year 12, I am going to increase the amount of training that I'm going to do. So you finish year 11 exams, you get to year 12. And now at year 12, you're now trying to play catch up, basically. You're really trying to play catch up. So what happens, especially for girls, I'll talk about girls, for example. Once year 11 or that exam year knocks you out, when you come back in year 12, when you resume swimming, the 11 and 12-year-old girls have gone through puberty or maturation. And these 12-year-old girls are now beating you. For the boys who are about 13, 14, and you're now at 16, 17, these boys are now, the kids you left a year ago are now beating you, number one. So now you're going to try play catch up year 12. You have a bit more time, you try play catch up. But again, you remember the Kenyan system does not care. It's all about academics. It's all about academics. So even at year 12, even though you have a bit more time, it is still very heavily academic. So again, you try push through, you improve your time slightly. Now you hit with year 13. For 844, I'd call that Form 4. For CBE, I'll call that year 12. So now that you've been hit with that, again, sports has to take a break. Sports has to totally take a break. I know CBE does have a track called sports science. I'm waiting to see what that pathway looks like, and I hope it will be some of the solutions for what I'm looking for. So at this point, the academics is very heavy, especially for those doing IB and 844. Very heavy. So now training almost goes to zero. But you're trying to get your 2-3 sessions in a week. Mind you, in the US, in the UK, in South Africa, in Egypt, they're getting in 8 to 9 sessions of swimming. Of course, I have my philosophies around that. But yes, they're getting about 8 to 9 sessions of swimming, 2 to 3 sessions of gym on top of their academics. So now once you finished your exams, you've been able to scrape by because you've been swimming from a young age. And perfect. For a boy, you're swimming a 55 in 100 free. For a girl, you're swimming a 102 or a 103 in 100 freestyle. And that's why we normally get stuck for boys and girls in Kenya. 53, 54, 100 free for boys, a minute, 101, 102 for girls. So at this point, you've now finished your exams and you're looking at the next transition phase. So how am I going to transition into university? And you want to get into a good swimming school because you want to continue and progress your swimming. And these are our top athletes swimming in Kenya. So what's going to happen is that once you finish, you try get recruited. Most universities in the world will not recruit you because your standards are too low. For a boy swimming a 54 at 18, it's a very hard standard to get into a competitive swimming program abroad. You might be lucky if your academics are very strong. It'll get into a good school. You might not get into a good swimming school, but you'll get into a good school. So that's where the challenge has been. So how do we remedy that? So we need to remedy that by either providing alternative pathways for our talented swimmers. When they get to a specific age, Is there a way we can blend academics and sports? Can I still be a high-level athlete and get an A? I want to move past to a different sport, which is tennis. You have Angela Okutoi. I hope I pronounced her name properly. So Angela made the conscious decision to leave school to do an online platform and do homeschooling so that she can focus on tennis. And now she's in Auburn University. She's in an Ivy League school. I need to confirm if it still ranks as an Ivy League school. In a school that is even better than some of the universities some of your children will get into. And she was still able to get a very good GPA, and she was still able to do her sports. But in Kenya, we are so stuck in our ways. We cannot imagine our child not going to Strathmore School or Kianda or Msongari or whatever other school that's in your mind, because that's where excellence lies. That is a myth. You can still have an alternative academic program, which is tailored to their swimming. And they, on top of their swimming or their sport, they will outdo the other children who have focused on academics only. So that is where we need to make a major shift. And that's something that I'm working on in the pipelines. And it's something I will share with the swimming community in due time. But yes, that shift needs to be made. Otherwise, we will be stuck in our same in-out. I have athletes in my club who want to take the swimming to the next level. I hear the school they go to, and I already immediately, I'm very questionable. I don't want to write them off because I never write off an athlete or a child. But if you tell me in Strathmore, I'm like, okay, I'm not so sure. If I tell you in Kianda, Msongari, more educational, I'm very skeptical because I'm not sure you can be able to balance the academic program. And mind you, I went to Strathmore, so I'm not bad-mouthing Strathmore. It's a fantastic school. It made me who I am, and they're doing a good job. But for athletes, it is not an ideal environment. So that's number one. So now that it goes back to the second thing I have been crying for years in the swimming community. We need to come up with something called a long-term athlete development program. A long-term athlete development program. And before my old coach, Mr. Mureithi, of course, I love you with all my heart. We have thought about this long-term athlete development program with you, and we have not seen eye to eye about the long-term athlete development program. But I just wanted to explain what it is and what it is not. So when we're having a bit of a back and forth with Mr. Mureithi, my old coach, and he has produced one of the best swimmers in the country. In fact, some of the swimmers swimming right now are one of the best. But what we were differing on opinion was that he was saying the long-term athlete development program, we are trying to put coaches in a box. And coaching is an art. We should not tell coaches how to coach. That was a challenge that was coming from him and a few other coaches who I respect. The other thing that was coming from them was that we cannot borrow a system from the US and from Canada and adopt it here. I'm in agreement. We cannot borrow policies mindlessly. But what is a long-term athlete development program? A long-term athlete development program usually starts with the research phase. So we normally come up with a research question or a hypothesis to find out what is ailing our sport in the country. Number one, we'd identify like academics, like what I had spoken about, number one, which is academics. So what is ailing our sport? So academics will be highlighted as one of them. What are some of the other challenges that we're having? Coach education. We're having challenges with infrastructure. We're having challenges with early specialization and development of swimming, where our coaches and our parents are over-pushing our young athletes. So all that research is collated into a bank of, let's call them the problems of swimming. And then from there, we come up with a framework that allows us to address each and every one of that question, looking at the athlete in terms of their different phases of development. So we look at the research we have done. So what is ailing our sport? Number two, on this side, we look at the physiology. So now we go a bit more scientific and we look at the physiology of children. So we look at from the age of 4 to the age of 25, how are these athletes developing? And then we overlap those two and we come up with a program that is able to first address the problems that we have in the country. And then number two, give Kenya a roadmap on how we need to deal with each athlete at every stage. I'll give you an example for now. In Kenya, we have a challenge where our under 10s are being overcompeted and overtrained. That is a problem. So now we come up with a framework and we say, as the federation or the swimming body, we are stating that at under 10, this is what an ideal coaching framework looks like based on the challenges we have identified. So we can tell coaches that at under 10, please do not make your athletes swim 6 days a week. Let them swim 3 days a week and let them do another sport. Let them swim 4 days a week and make it fun. Let them do 1 or 2 competitions a season and let them not compete every weekend. You see, you're giving guidelines. If a coach doesn't want to follow that, that is up to them. So this framework will be able to help us as Kenya address the major problems, and we can tick them off one by one in terms of addressing them. And that also gives us a roadmap on how we can excel. So those policies need to be in place. Number 3 is something that we have a challenge, is that in Kenyan swimming, and swimming in general, there is no incentive past high school. We do not have, because for athletes, it's all about, I'm swimming because my parents have told me to swim. If you look at football on the other side, people can actually see athletes going and making money and careers out of swimming. Out of football. They can see scholarships. They can see opportunities to go and study abroad. They can see opportunities of making money. Even here in Kenya, if you play football or play rugby for KCB Rugby Club or Football Club, you get a good salary. You can be paid a good amount of money that can be able to help you do whatever it is you want to do. So swimming has no incentive beyond high school. And that's why, again, there's something I've been working on, which is university scholarships and pathways, because I want athletes to see that if I swim well enough and if I do well enough in my academics, there's a way I can go and do my academics abroad. There is also something we can look at in terms of how do we remunerate athletes. And this is where I go back to my old coach. As I said, I had 3 influential coaches in my life: Coach David from Brookshine, Coach Shirley Minor from Otters, and Coach Mureithi, who was at Aga Khan with me. So the 3 of them really shaped who I am today. And that's why I agree with Coach Mureithi, because I've had this discussion for a long time, is how do we incentivize athletes financially beyond high school or even in high school? Prize money, gifts, scholarships. These are some of the things that actually incentivize. And I know that's extrinsic motivation, which is a sports psychology topic by itself. But it does actually help when an athlete can actually see a roadmap out of the situation that they're in. So that needs to be done. There are these World Aquatic scholarships that are being given by World Aquatics, which are fantastic, but it's only one. What are other opportunities? Can you get a scholarship to a better high school? So can you move from some school and get a scholarship in Braeburn, in Hillcrest, in Strathmore School, in some of the better schools? Because some swimmers are coming from some schools which do not have the infrastructure and they're really scraping by. And some of these schools that have better infrastructure would be better. Is there a way we can create those pipelines? And again, the backstops with some of the federations. I am doing this personally because I'm doing it out of frustration. These are not things I enjoy doing. I just enjoy running my club. I don't enjoy having to come up with programs and all these things for athletes. It has been born out of frustration, and that's why those are the things that I have. That's how I've ended up coming up with those things. So a long-term athlete development program has to be in place. I do not care if you do not believe about putting coaches in a box, but we need a direction in the country that addresses the major problems. Number 4 is something I'm very passionate about. Competitions. Competitions are destroying the swimming fraternity. And it is not because of ill intentions from anyone. It is because of probably lack of education and understanding on long-term athlete development. As a parent, I'm a parent of 3 children. And for me, I want the best for my child. So when I see my child winning medals at 6, 7, and 8, I get very excited. And for me, I believe more is better. The more medals, the more competitions they win, the better they become. As a coach, the more medals and trophies my children win, the better the coach feels the club is doing. For the Nairobi County, Kiambu County, Eldoret County, all the counties in Nairobi again, the more the competitions, the longer the competitions, the better. Because again, the more people compete, the better they become. But I will tell you, and this is not because I want to ruffle any feathers, and it's not because I'm trying to start some form of conspiracy theory. We need, at younger ages, we are incentivizing the wrong outcomes, number one, which is medals, trophies, and positions. I have said this over and over again. If you have two 12-year, let me even say 10-year-olds, if you have two 10-year-old boys standing side by side, one of them might be this height and the other one might be this height. Same biological, chronological age. They were born on the same day. But boy A has a biological maturation of 12 years. Boy B has a biological maturation of 8 years. So they're varying biologically by 8 years. And what we are doing, we are comparing them. And then we are deciding that future champions based on data that is skewed. Comparing a 12-year-old biological boy and an 8-year-old biological boy is not fair. And stating that this 12-year-old biological boy, who is still, and they're both the same age, is our future Olympian, is wrong. And what it does, it ends up removing 95% of the children from the sport not because they're not talented, but because they have not matured biologically like the other children. So we are making decisions on children when they're too young. And this is hurting the sport. We need to allow them to compete until a point where we can actually say they have gone through full biological maturation, and now we can compare. And the reason the sport of swimming is worse than other sports is because football, if you have a smaller or a boy who has not matured biologically, they will play football because of the pure joy. There's just something about football. I love football. I actually wanted to be a footballer before I wanted to become a swimmer. So football is able to keep the children in the sport for longer because even if they're not doing well, they will still play with their friends, they will still continue playing because it's a social and a fun sport. Swimming, on the other hand, if your child does not medal, and I looked at the statistics, about 85% of the children will not get a medal at a gala. They will be removed from the sport. I want to say this with a bit of caution, but swimming is not as fun as football. And I know I'm saying that and everyone will be an uproar, but swimming is a lonely sport. And it's hard. So if you introduce that aspect of comparison too early, the kids who are not biologically mature will just drop off the sport. And you'll be left with this swimmer who was the best. And at some point, you will realize they'll plateau. And it is because maybe, just maybe, we selected the wrong athlete. That 10-year-old champion who we then groomed to become our 18-year-old champion and then did not make it to the Olympics, it's because maybe, just maybe, we picked the wrong person. But in most instances, I am not against early talent. I have a lot of early talent in my club, and I love them to death. I love those kids to death. But the question is, how do we make sure that those early talent matures and grows gradually and systematically, while making sure the other 95, that 95% is the one I care about also. How is that 85 to 95%? How do we make sure we grow together? So that by the time they're 18, we can look at them side by side and say, yes, actually, he was poised to be the next champion in Kenya. While right now we are selecting champions when they're too early. So what is my second problem with how we have structured competitions? So competitions in Kenya, again, sorry, let me go back to the incentivization, by the way, before I talk. So what has also happened is that medals and trophies are incentivizing coaches to overcompete their athletes. So me, for example, I have about 4 very talented athletes in my club. Very talented. I'm talking about the ones who are outliers. And if I was being incentivized by the current system, I would put them in competitions and put them in 18 or 20 events so that my club wins the trophy. So that at the end of the competition, I can put the club on social media and say, guys, look, we were number one in nationals. We were number one in minnows. We were number one at interclubs. So our coaches are being incentivized to win the trophies, and it's not their fault. Because when I post on social media that I was number one, I get more customers because parents will trust me more because my children are winning. And what that has done, it has created a system where athletes or the children are being the victims because we are subjecting them to too much pressure, too much before they can mentally cope with that stress. So parents and coaches, take it easy. Don't care about the medals and trophies. If you're a good coach, it'll be fine. And in fact, that thing I learned it from Coach Shirley when we were young. I used to ask her, Coach, why have you only put me in 4 events or 5 events? I want to do 15 events so that I win the trophy. And she sat us down and she told me, I would rather you do well in a few events that you can rest and recover and focus on your strategy than throw you in everything and get mediocre times. And I used to crave that trophy. And I used to think, why is she keeping the trophy from me? And later, when I was 17, and our club was the only one having kids 14 and over, is when it clicked. That thing that I thought was mad actually makes sense. The other thing is that our current competitive structure is creating tired swimmers, bored coaches, and frustrated parents. And again, I do not want to ruffle any feathers here, but what is happening is that our 2-day competition schedule is too heavy for children. I do understand that pools are expensive to hire. I do understand that that the associations need to make money for them to stay afloat, and that I am truly cognizant of. But every gala cannot be a championship meet, which are 2 days. We had minnows that happened last weekend for 2 days. These are children who are 11 and under, competing for 2 days. Again, too heavy. I see some of the coaches on deck exhausted. I see some of the parents on deck bored, pacing up and down, wondering when the competition is going to end. Why not? I'm not against competitions. I believe we can compete every 2 weeks. So what I believe should be ideal is, instead of having these very long day galas, is how do we break them up into smaller meets? My son and I have a football club also, for example, and we are in a football league called the Rising Stars Football League. In that football league, we normally meet every second Sunday or twice a month. Sunday from about 1 p.m. to about 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., we have competitions. That is fantastic. Can swimming adopt a similar approach where every 2 weeks we meet on a Sunday afternoon, a Sunday morning, a Saturday afternoon, do 4 events and go home? Is that possible? Will that hinder development? In fact, no, it will actually aid development because children will be able to try different events. They will be able to try different events. I'll give you an example about South Africa. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a coach at Braeburn called Doyle. We swam with him. And when we were at South Africa, the way they used to structure our age group competitions was we used to go to Long Street in Cape Town. And what would happen from 8 to 10 in the morning, the babies would come. Maybe the 10 to 11-year-olds will come and swim. From 11 to 2, the next age group. From blah, another age group comes. And then in the afternoon, us who are the senior swimmers from university would come. And we would only have two or three events that we would swim and go home. So me, I would arrive at Long Street at about 2 p.m., 3 p.m., do my warm-up. The gala starts at 4. We finish at 6:30, 7. Sometimes we'd finish at 8. And you go home. Can we adopt a similar approach? For Nairobi County, Kiambu, all these galas, if this model does not fit you financially, what can we do? As I said, South Africa have adopted that model of staggering the age group so that the kids are not there the whole day. which makes sense. You still make your money as an association because you still do make money for a full day. You can do it over 2 days if you want, but the kids do not need to come for the entire 2 day duration. So that's a solution. You make your money, everyone is happy. Or alternatively, have the galas shorter and staggered over different events or over different weeks, just as the Rising Star Football League. We just know every 2 weeks we have a gala. Sunday afternoon, we show up. And again, some of these schools that are hosting galas, if you gave them a good value proposition, they would give you the pool for free. We just need to be a bit more innovative in the way we think. So that's a solution I'm giving you. We can still continue with the 2 day galas, but for me, I'm not so happy. The 2 day galas only make sense once or twice a year. And those are now the championships meets that we're talking about. We can't even do 3 days. So in November, we're going to do a 3 day gala. Perfect, because that's now the culmination of the smaller galas, and now we do an event at the end. So that's my challenge with competition. So parents, coaches, take it easy with the babies. If possible, don't enter them in too many events. Let them stagger the events. Don't worry too much about medals and trophies. They're meaningless. Again, my opinion, everyone is open to their own opinion. So I think I've covered everything under competitions. There's one more thing I think I've forgotten, but anyway, I'll come back to it if I can think through it. So another thing that we are struggling with right now, which is coaching standards, education and standards, which we spoke about last week when we're discussing with Coach Kasim about coach education. So in Kenya, we currently don't have a framework for how coach education is happening. So what has happened is that anyone can run coaching courses in Kenya. And what happens, the challenge with that is that it can incentivize people who are business oriented to come into this space and be able to make a killing while reducing the standards. So if Kenya Aquatics clearly came out with a standard and told us, level 1, swimming coaching requires you to do it for a week. You cannot progress to level 2 until you have been a level 1 coach for 3 months. So that means you have gotten your certificate, you have done your internship or attachment, and then you can now sit for your level 2 certifications. After level 2 again, what is the standard? Should it be 1 day? Should it be 2 days? Should it be 3 days? After level 2 again, you need to be given a chance to coach at that level. By the time you're coming for level 3, you need to have coached a swimmer at a high level. You need to have been able to have gotten some experience under your belt, because level 3 is not just a title. It is a badge of honor to state that I have put in the work as a coach and I have earned my stripes. So if the federation came up with those standards, it becomes easy that anyone who brings a course to Kenya, does it meet our standards? And in Kenya, I am a lecturer at the university. In fact, I'll be marking 10 years teaching at KU in September. In Kenyatta University, there is a body called the Commission of University Education, Q. And Q has set the standards for us. We cannot wake up one day and say our degree is going to be 2 years. We cannot wake up one day and say our course only has 2 units. We cannot wake up one day and say that the contact hours for our units are going to be 30 minutes per unit. No. Q have set out guidelines and standards. So I'm calling upon the federation to create standards so that by the time we look at certificates for coaches, we are clear that this standard has been met. And not just because of coaching quality, but because of safeguarding, and we deserve to make sure that the coaches that go out there are of the best standards. Right now, there are some courses that are going on, and a coach can complete the course without having finished life saving. without having a police clearance certificate. That is not ideal. How can you certify a coach without first finding out, are they a sex offender? Have they been fired from a school for indiscipline? Have they been in prison? Because I know of a coach who was put up on criminal charges for sexual assault. And this same coach, luckily he stopped coaching years ago. This same coach, if he was to come back today and enroll in a course, would you allow him there? Life-saving. Your children can drown at any point. Are those standards in place? Can we say without a shadow of a doubt that the standards have been met? So we owe it to our children for us to make sure that the courses and the standards are of high quality. And for me, I've decided one day I will run for Kenya Aquatics president, and that is one of the things that I want to change. Is just to make sure our children safe. Because that's something I'm passionate about. I want our children to be safe, and I want our children not to go through some of the silly, stupid things us guys went through. Now I get to number 6, which is a bit heavy, which is around governance and leadership. In Kenya, we have an issue of governance and leadership in general across the board. I'm not here to just talk ill about the federation. In fact, I've stopped doing that. I'm tired of always going and shouting and complaining about the federation and their standards. So today, I just want to tell you a story about governance and how we can achieve it. So there was a time when Moi Kibaki was in power after, was it Rio Olympics, called all the athletes to State House to appreciate them for all of the efforts that they had put in place. So as he was watching upon the athletes arriving, he noticed the athletes are arriving via matatu in tattered clothes. Some of them are looking malnourished, some of them are looking sick, some of them are looking disheveled, while our federation heads are coming in big cars, are coming in with good clothes. What the scales have turned. We are in the sport because of the athletes, not the other way around. And athletes are so scared of the federations because if they speak out, they will get victimized and they will not be able to speak. So Mwai Kibaki, that is when he came up with the plan of the Sports Act. And forgive me if I have changed the narration slightly. And the Sports Act was put in place primarily to protect athletes. And one of the things was to make sure that the athletes have a voice in the table of governance. So currently, as it is drafted in the Sports Act, when we are looking at how do we give a voice to the athletes, for me, the best way to give a voice to the athletes is to allow the athletes themselves, regardless of the sport. This is not even just for swimming. Athletes in the sport need to be able to vote for their leaders directly. The way in which sports currently works is that we elect clubs. Club members elect their county heads, and then county heads then go elect the president of the executive committee of the federation. So I'll put that in perspective. That is like in Kenya, if we were to elect our governors, and then our governors then sit down and elect our president. That's basically the same concept. So sports is run in that manner. And what happens is that this system has created a system where these people keep on electing themselves and they pop up here and there because the athletes are not having a good enough voice at the table at the top. And just imagine if Kenya was run in such a system where we were only allowed to vote for our governors, and our governors would then decide who our president would be. I promise you we would have been one of the most backwards nation in the world. Democracy, I know Kenya is not perfect. And I know we have a lot of corruption and we have issues. But democracy has been able to give us a fighting chance. Dictatorship will take us backwards. But democracy has given us a chance. I know people might have the issues about Ruto, blah, 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 but you voted for him. And the system that has been put in place allows us to vote him out or vote him in if he's doing a good job. In sports, that system almost does not exist. So, what is the solution? If you look at the Sports Act carefully, what it did, it allows club members to vote for the Federation Executive Committee, including the president of the Federation. So, what does that look like in principle? I know it's hard because now people are going to argue, in swimming, they're going to argue, how do children vote? Look, guys, this is just the beginning of a dialogue. In other sports, they'll say, we have 1,000 athletes, how will they vote? In Kenya, we have a very massive population and we're still able to vote and we pull it off. So how do we get athletes to directly cast their vote for the president of the federation? Is that possible? Most people in sports have told me it's not possible, but I believe it is possible. And it will reduce the chances of that cyclical. I'll give you an example. In 2011, I went for All African Games. I don't want to name drop, but the person who was in charge of the body that was organizing All African Games from Kenya, I have a photo. He was sitting next to me. He's still currently the head of that specific institution. What is that? So again, leaders need to be selected through a democratic process. In swimming, what does that look like? People will argue that these are children. How will children vote? We have guardians. We have other solutions. And if swimming becomes the first, this will cascade to other sports. And finally, democracy will happen. And again, when we take it a step further, how are people voted at National Olympic Committee and voted at the and sit in these governing bodies? Same delegate system. So the heads of the federations are the ones who then vote for the heads at the National Olympic Committee. And the people at the National Olympic Committee then decide who will sit on the bodies at IOC. So as you see, we keep cascading or keep delegating that responsibility to someone else. And the more you delegate, the less power you have over your leadership. So this is just a thought I'm putting out there. If swimming, we can be the first ones to do it. I believe the rest of the sports can do it, and we can fall in line. The next and final, I'm towards the final of the podcast now, is transparency and accountability. The federations, Kenya Aquatics and other federations, have been run with very minimal accountability. We are just lucky that there's social media and WhatsApp to save us. Selection criteria are sent out late or are not followed. Officials who are selected to go for some of these trips, the criteria of even how they were shortlisted and selected are not very clear. The way in which money is utilized is not clear. At our church, which is Nairobi Chapel Karen, our pastor actually comes and shows us that this is how much money we received, this is how much money was disbursed, and there's accountability and transparency. If you need audited accounts, it's something they can actually provide because we are the ones supporting the church. There's zero accountability and transparency in federations. In fact, there was a time that a specific federation was supposed to receive money, and they had been asked, for you to receive this money, we will request that Ernst & Young manage the finances, or monies are paid directly to suppliers. And that is how that federation lost that funding, because federations do not want accountability or transparency. So does there need to be an intermediary that manages finances? I don't know. There are many of these companies that can actually manage finances on behalf of federations. Again, I do understand the system is flawed because currently the way federations work is that the leaders who are elected are volunteers, so they do not get a salary. So yes, there's a bit of an issue because they're not being remunerated financially. So the only way they can make money is look for unscrupulous ways, because we are human beings. We need to give time for money. But sports leaders give time but no money. So can we rethink remuneration at a federation level? something interesting to think about, which will then deter some of these leaders from always wanting to take shortcuts. For example, you will send a list and say, we are taking 30 athletes for Africa Championships. Take 15 athletes, and then the money you are given for the other 15, use it to do other things. That's what they have been forced to do. So is there a way we can incentivize and pay our executive committee better? I don't know. Is that ethical? It is something we can discuss. But it might be one of the ways we can do it. So yes, we need to be able to elect our leaders directly. And once we elect those leaders, we need to hold them accountable. And the last point is policies and structures. So in swimming, there was recently a petition that had been sent around accusing specific individuals about specific nefarious activities. But you cannot blame these individuals because the policies and structures have not been put in place to ensure that this supposed, I'm not saying they happened, I'm not saying those issues happened, but those supposed things have, that there should be policies and structures to reduce the outcome. Because one of the accusations was that an individual was benefiting directly from sales or was supplying things to the federation. There needs to be a simple conflict of interest policy that is put in place that individuals sign before. Number two, there's a course that has been brought to Kenya, and it has been brought by a person who is in the executive committee of the federation. That is not illegal. What he has done is not illegal. In fact, he's a businessman and it is his right. So we cannot blame him for executing his right to run business in Kenya. But are there policies and standards that state that if you're in the executive committee, I cannot run a private course that has been sanctioned by the federation? Is there a policy in place for that? Yes or no? So again, some of these things that we are complaining about are happening because policies and structures have not been put in place, or if they have been put in place, have not been followed to the letter. And those people who have been accused in that petition, when I read the petition, actually, in Kenya, it's like in Kenyan swimming, it's free for all. You do whatever you want because there are no policies and structures. So if you take them to court, they might most probably will win because they've done nothing wrong. And there's nothing they have signed, and unless maybe there's a constitutional right that they have broken. So again, policies and structures. Please let us operate like a professional body. I'm not blaming Kenya Aquatics for anything. I'm just giving you guys ideas. Have you done some good things? Yes, you have. Have you struggled in some areas? Yes, you have, just like any other human beings. And I know if you decide to do some things ethically, these are some of the things, like if you guys are struggling with money and you want to be paid, put it on the table and say, as federation members, we want to be paid. And we have come up with a structure where we are going to get corporate sponsorship, a percentage will go to salary payments, and everything is above board. No one is against people being paid and making money. If you want to run a course and you're in the federation, you need to find out, is it against the conflict of interest policy? If not, how do I go about running this course? And what are the minimum standards of this course? If I want to, basically these standards are the ones that are going to guide us as a swimming community. So for me, those are the 6 things that I think, and I'm going to recap. Number 1, our education system, or the way in which academics is being portrayed in Kenya, is destroying swimming. Number 2, we need a long-term athlete development program. We need clear incentives for swimmers. We need a competition structure that does not burn out our babies before they're able to mature physically. We need coach education systems and standards so that not every person is a coach, a level 4 coach. But while the time we see there's a level 3 or a level 4 coach, we can trust that this person has put in the time, has the relevant experience, and is of a specific caliber. And finally, governance. Let us vote for our executive committee directly. Let us not have to go through intermediaries who are then going to manipulate the system to elect the president of the federation or the executive committee of the federation. transparency and accountability. And finally, we need to run sports in an ethical manner. Because even the Bible is very clear. Any money that is made in haste is lost hastily. So any coach, any person in the federation right now, if you're looking at making money in a hasteful manner, God will take that money away from you. If you want to cut corners, God will punish you eventually. It might not be now, it might be your children, it might be your grandchildren, but the time will come. If you do your work in an ethical manner, and if you follow biblical principles, and if you do things in a right manner, God will bless you. And God will be able to provide for you and your family continuously and consistently. So that is just a cry that I have there for all the coaches, all the members of the federation, all the members of the association, that we need to change the way in which we do things. We need to do things in a way that God will be proud of. And for me, that is it. And again, as we keep saying here at Beyond Talent Podcast, that talent does not win, but systems win. And I'm out and I'm looking forward to our next episode. Thank you.